David R. Malpass, born March 8, 1956, is an American economist. He served as Deputy Assistant Treasury Secretary under President Ronald Reagan, Deputy Assistant Secretary of State under President George H. W. Bush, and Chief Economist at Bear Stearns for the 6 years preceding its collapse. During the presidencies of Ronald Reagan and George H. W. Bush, Malpass worked on an array of economic, budget, and foreign policy issues including small business promotion throughout Latin America, and the 1986 tax cut. Malpass served as the Republican staff director of Congress's Joint Economic Committee from 1989 to 1990, and is a member of Congress's Blue Ribbon Panel on Budget Scoring from 2002 to 2003. Malpass worked at Bear Stearns for 15 years in the firm's research department, with 6 of those years as the firm's chief economist. Malpass's team ranked second in the Institutional Investor ranking of Wall Street economists in 2005, 2006, and 2007. As a result of the global financial crisis and under the prodding of the Federal Reserve and U.S. Treasury Department, Bear Stearns was sold to J.P. Morgan Chase in March 2008. Malpass founded Encima Global shortly after. In June 2008, Encima is a New York City firm providing daily analysis of global economic and political trends relevant to institutional investors. Malpass writes a column for Forbes magazine and is a contributor to the op-ed section of the Wall Street Journal. He is also a frequent TV commentator. From 1977 to 1983, Malpass worked in Portland, Oregon for Oresco Corporation and Arthur Andersen's Systems Consulting Group, where he became a licensed CPA. In 2012, he wrote a chapter entitled "Sound Money, Sound Policy" in the 4% Solution, Unleashing the Economic Growth America Needs, published by the George W. Bush Presidential Center. Malpass sits on the boards of UBS funds, the New Mountain Financial Corporation, the Manhattan Institute, and the Gary Klinsky Children's Center. He is also a former director of the National Committee on United States-China Relations, the Council of the Americas, and the Economic Club of New York. In 2010, Malpass ran for the Republican nomination for United States Senate in that year's special election. In New York, he placed second in the three-way primary with 38% of the vote. Malpass joined the Trump presidential campaign in May 2016 as senior economic advisor. He appeared frequently on television and radio to support Trump's message of faster growth through policy reforms. 4 of his pre-election Forbes columns discussed the need for political upheaval to upend the status quo. On August 5, the campaign announced an economic roundtable including Malpass. His September 1, 2016 New York Times op described fast growth through a policy upheaval covering taxes, trade, regulations, and energy. Why our economy needs Trump. Across the election time period, Malpass was heading the transition team's work on economic agencies including Treasury, Commerce, the Federal Reserve, USTR and independent regulatory agencies as Trump prepares to be inaugurated as president in 2017. Economic and Public Policy View. Government waste. As a columnist, Malpass has been a critic of government spending and taxation levels in the United States. In 2010, following the passage of the Affordable Care Act, he referred to Washington's legislative and regulatory culture as being possessed by a tax and spend disposition. Later that year he warned that Washington's ongoing expansion threatened to bring about a fundamental deterioration in America's private sector. In his view, quote, "Small businesses are the nation's critical engine for growth. innovation and job creation. Yet they are being starved for credit and slammed with more taxes, government directives and litigation exposure. Quote, political upheaval. Malpass advocated political upheaval after the Republicans won control of the House in November 2010. With the election over, the nation's anger at Washington's gluttony and corruption must now channel itself into practical solutions. The election made clear that the people want a political upheaval aimed at fiscal sanity, responsible regulations and a reduction in federal power. In its first days, the new Congress has to act on the understanding that this is a takeover, an upheaval of the old spending culture. Quote, federal debt limit. In 2012, he proposed a political and legislative plan to rewrite the debt limit in order to restrain federal spending. The U.S. has a law on the books called the debt limit, but the name is misleading. The debt limit started in 1917 for the purpose of facilitating more national debt, not reducing it. It still serves that purpose. Replace the debt limit with an operational ceiling on the debt-to-GDP ratio. It should be forced onto a downward glide path to below 50%. The new debt limit should penalize Washington enough to make it do its job. If the debt ratio goes over the glide path, cut salaries each month for upper-income federal employees, including the President, Congress and senior officials. Make it very public that they are paid to control spending. Quote, IMF austerity programs. He has criticized the IMF's austerity programs for lowering median incomes in numerous countries, including South Africa, Argentina, Brazil, Mexico, Thailand, Malaysia, Greece and Portugal. In the private sector version of austerity, governments impose new taxes and mandates on the private sector while maintaining their own personnel, salaries and pensions. That's the anti-growth version of austerity prevalent in Europe's austerity programs. Quote, government and income inequality. In 2014, he argued that big government drives income inequality and that a reduction in centralized federal power would increase median incomes, stating, big government expansions in recent years have harmed individuals with modest incomes while exempting or benefiting people with higher incomes. Quote, quantitative easing. He criticized the Federal Reserve's quantitative easing program for slowing growth, misallocating credit to large bond issuers and worsening income inequality. Malpass views QE though a post-monetarist framework, and advocates a strong and stable dollar policy. Washington thrives on the impression that the economy and markets are dependent on the Federal Reserve and deficit spending. The Fed's low rates and bond purchases damaged markets, hurt savers and channeled credit to the government at the expense of job creators. Quote, education. Malpass holds a BA in physics from Colorado College and an MBA from the University of Denver. He studied international economics at Georgetown University's School of Foreign Service. He speaks Spanish, Russian, and French. Personal life. Malpass and his wife, Adele, daughter of Herman Obermeyer and granddaughter of Neville Levy, live in New York City. Adele Malpass is the chairwoman of the Manhattan Republican Party. Malpass is a native of northern Michigan. What will Donald Trump do on economic policy? Here's a top advisor's view. Encima Global. Malpass first on the air in Senate race. David Malpass runs for Senate.